What if I told you the shortest reign in history wasn't months, or weeks, or even days? We're talking about minutes.
That's right. 20 minutes. Less time than it's going to take you to watch this analysis. And in that tiny window of time, one man sat on a throne and sealed the fate of an entire nation.
Sounds crazy, right? Absolutely impossible. But those 20 minutes, they were the epicenter of a political earthquake that sent shockwaves across Europe. So how could a moment so fleeting have such a massive impact? Well, if you want to find out, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and let's unravel this mystery together.
All right, let's dive in. To really get what happened in those 20 minutes, we've got to rewind the clock back to 1824. France, well, it was living on a knife's edge. The Bourbon dynasty was back on the throne after Napoleon's fall, but the ghost of the revolution, it was lurking around every single corner.
You see, the nation was completely split in two. On one side, you had King Charles X, an ultra-conservative guy dead set on erasing the revolution and bringing back absolute monarchy with a vengeance. And on the other side, a people who had already tasted freedom and weren't about to give it up. These two Frances were on a collision course.
And Charles X's actions, they just kept pouring fuel on the fire. He paid off nobles who had fled during the revolution, slapped fierce censorship on the press, and tried to rule by decree, totally ignoring what the people and their elected representatives wanted. Every single move was another spark getting closer to a powder keg.
And that powder keg finally blew in July of 1830. With something called the July Ordinances, the king just dissolved the newly elected parliament, which had a liberal majority, by the way, and shut down freedom of the press. That was it, the final straw. Revolution wasn't just a possibility anymore, it was an absolute certainty.
The response was immediate. It was overwhelming. Paris just exploded. What started as protests by journalists and students morphed into a full-blown mass insurrection. The streets of the French capital became a battleground, almost overnight. It was 3 days of absolute fury. Day 1, July 27th, the first barricades go up. Day 2, the 8th, this is the turning point. The National Guard, instead of crushing the rebellion, joins the people. And by day 3, the 29th, the revolutionaries had seized the symbols of power, storming the Tuileries Palace. Royal authority in Paris had completely collapsed.
So with Paris in the hands of the revolutionaries, King Charles X, cornered in his castle outside the city, was facing the end of his entire world. Power had just slipped right through his fingers. The Bourbon dynasty was living out its final, desperate hours.
The date, August 2nd, 1830. The location, the Château de Rambouillet. The stage was set for the final act of a monarchy that had reigned for centuries. You could cut the tension with a knife.
Faced with a terrible choice, plunge France into a brutal civil war or give up his crown. Charles caved. Defeated, pressured from all sides, he picked up a pen and signed the paper that would change everything. He abdicated.
And this is where it all happens. The moment his father's signature dried, his son, Louis Antoine, automatically became King of France, King Louis XIX. But his reign, it would be measured in minutes. For 20 tense, agonizing minutes, he argued, he hesitated, he wrestled with the pressure. But his fate was sealed. 20 minutes after becoming king, Louis XIX also signed his own abdication, passing the crown to his young nephew.
But the story doesn't just end there. You see, for the most loyal monarchists, the so-called legitimists, these forced abdications meant nothing. They were illegal. To them, Louis XIX remained the one true king of France, living in exile until the day he died years later. A king without a kingdom, a symbol of a lost era.
But here's the twist. The Bourbon plan to keep the crown in the family, it failed. Spectacularly. The power vacuum didn't last long. It was quickly filled by a distant cousin, Louis Philippe, the Duke of Orleans, who ushered in a completely different kind of monarchy. And this is a huge shift. Louis Philippe wasn't the King of France, a title that basically meant power from God. No, he was the King of the French, a monarch whose power came from the wealthy middle class, the bourgeoisie. This wasn't just symbolic, it reflected a massive social change. The Industrial Revolution was creating a new powerhouse class, and now they had a king who looked out for their interests. It was a new era, where money talked louder than royal blood.
The shockwave didn't stop at the French border. Oh no, this event set Europe ablaze. In Belgium, a revolution succeeded, leading to its permanent independence from the Netherlands.
a brand new kingdom born from this fire. In Poland, a brave nationalist uprising tried to shake off Russian rule, and in Italy, sparks of liberal revolts lit the flame that would, decades later, unify the country. The old order was just crumbling everywhere.
The takeaway was crystal clear. That conservative order, the one set up by the Congress of Vienna back in 1815 specifically to stamp out revolutions, was broken beyond repair. The 1830 uprising sealed its fate for good. The spirit of 1789 was back, and this time, it looked like it was here to stay. Europe would never be the same again.
And all of that brings us right back to this. 20 minutes, a blink of an eye in the grand sweep of history, the length of a reign that barely even happened, but symbolized the end of one world and the explosive beginning of another.
So, it leaves us with this question, doesn't it? What really defines a legacy? Is it the amount of time you spend in power, or is it the impact of the moment it all comes crashing down? What do you think? I really want to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.